Welcome, those of you who have tuned in this evening. Thanks for taking the time to share this next hour with us. I would just, for a moment, like to mention that last month we talked about technical education versus, not necessarily versus, but along with four-year degree granting institutions. That was quite a successful evening. We've had over 400 people that have viewed that, and we view that as a success. And so based upon that, we intend to have a monthly community roundtable talking about various topics that are of interest to those of us in this community. Tonight's topic is first responders, and included in that will be those who man ambulances, paramedics, EMT, that level of folks, as well as our firemen. We have a great volunteer fire department here in Phillip, and so those are what we characterize as first responders. This evening we're going to talk about that, hopefully in some depth. We have a really nice panel with us this evening. We have Kathy Chesney, who's a paramedic. We have Marty Hansen, who is our fire chief and also an EMTI, and then Brock Hansen, who is a member of our volunteer fire department. We may have another person or two that will join us, and that will be totally acceptable. But we intend to talk about a lot of really good things. You guys, just so you kind of know what I have in mind, I'm going to ask that we all give a little brief introduction of yourselves, who you are, your training, that kind of thing. I want to also talk about the beginnings and how the first alert system was formed. I know you guys have been in on the ground floor of that, or you go back a long, long ways. So I want to talk a little about that. The topic of interest right now is burnout amongst first responders. That was an issue in front of the legislature last winter, and they've talked about it in a summer study. I want to talk a little about that. I want to talk about retention of those folks who are involved in the first alert business. Brock, you're kind of the future of it. I want to include that a little bit and see where we're going to go in the next number of years. When you look at a rural area like Phillip and Hutton County, an ambulance service and a good fire department are integral to our ongoing community and safety and the goodness of our society. So we have to do that. And I'm going to give you a little heads up. Hopefully in the last 10 minutes or so, I would like to have you guys relate a heartwarming story of something that you did that changed somebody's life or changed the community or something. So if we have a few minutes at the end, I'd kind of like to do that if you can think of something. And Kathy, I know from talking to you, I could tell a couple of your stories and you'll have plenty of them. So I'll just give you a little heads up, you guys, at the end. I'd like to try to do that. So with that then, I think we'll get into the meat of the evening. We're going to try to spend an hour, and that will go by rather quickly. So Kathy, why don't you kick it off and just tell us your history. I know you did that last month rather, from an education perspective, but do it again for us relative to your paramedic training and your passion for first responding.
Okay. Boy, when I was in high school, the thought I was either going to go into music or go into medicine. Medicine was going to be too expensive, and I didn't have the grade point average. So I guess I ended up in music. But medicine has still always been a passion. Quite a bit of that probably was from how ill my mother was in my childhood years and some things like that. But I was in Murdo, and first I was on the fire department. Had been there for about a year or so, and the ambulance service needed drivers. So I took the EVOC driving portion for ambulance. Then that wasn't enough for me, so I took the EMT basic class. Then I had an opportunity. I'd been an EMT for about 3 years, and we had a rural health medicine grant to provide advanced life skill providers in rural communities. And I was able to get into paramedic school on that grant. It was a U.S. Department of Health and Human Services grant. And I did a part-time paramedic program that ran over 18 months versus 9 months, which is the typical paramedic program now is 9 months, every 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. That's what a paramedic program would be. It has certain number of hours of classroom and a certain hours of clinicals where you're in the hospital in different areas. But now I just, 2 years ago, I received my 20-year National Registry Paramedic Certificate. So I've been a nationally registered paramedic for 23 years now. And it just was kind of what happened, just rural community needed people.
Kathy, a lot of us wonder, what exactly does a paramedic do? And I know you're very highly trained, but briefly give us the spectrum of what you can do here and how far you can go in terms of helping someone.
An EMT basic is kind of what it sounds like. It's the basic foundation of what you need to be able to function in emergency medicine. You've got to know the anatomy and physiology of a human. You've got to understand how the blood circulates, how the air works, how your pulmonary system works, your breathing, how to assess a person. And that's the most important thing we do, is to do a good assessment of our patient, whether there's a certain way that you go about assessing and you do it the same way every time. And that's how you lock in what you do and you don't miss anything that way. But you've got your medical assessment, you've got your trauma patient assessment. You know, we have to be able to recognize when someone's getting into trouble, if they've lost too much blood, what to do to try to stop that. And how to, we call it packaging, meaning how do we basically splint, because I think everybody understands that word, a patient so that they don't become injured more and that we can move them safely. EMT basics can also give a limited medications, Narcan, which I think everybody's heard of in these days of opiate overdose. They can also do EpiPens for like severe allergic reactions, and it's called activated charcoal for overdoses. So right now, those are the medications that an aspirin that an EMT basic can give. Then the next level of training that we have, you can't get this training anymore, but we still have grandfathered in what are called EMT intermediates. An intermediate then is trained, has to have their EMT basic, then they take this additional training and they can start IVs and run certain types of fluids, like normal saline, which is the most common fluid that we use, and that's what an EMT intermediate does. Then there's another level called an advanced EMT. You have to take training, again, above the EMT basic, and there are certain medications that they can give. They can, of course, do the Narcan also, but then they can give it IV, not just the nasal Narcan. They can do, it's called D50 for someone who's in a diabetic who's having a problem, their blood sugar's too low. They can give a nebulizer treatment. There's just different things, different medications that they can do. Then you paramedics, a lot of it depends on your medical director, how much you can do, but I carry a whole line of cardiac medicines. If your heart's beating too slow, I can make it beat faster. If it's beating too fast, I can make it beat slower. If it's not beating, I can give you a medication to hopefully irritate your heart to get it beating. There are a various line of medications to help you breathe. There's medications for overdoses. There's medications, I can give you a series of medications that will paralyze you, stop your breathing, and then I would have to put a tube down your throat to help you breathe. I can do surgical airways. I can put a needle in the chest if they got a collapsed lung. Can give blood in the ambulance. There's any number of things then that a paramedic can do.
Okay, Kathy, I'll bet we'll come back to that, but I think one of the bottom line messages from that is that the higher level of care we can get with someone like Kathy more quickly is terribly important out here. So we'll probably come back to that sometime during the next few minutes. But Marty, I'm then going to move to you. We have Marty Hansen, who's the fire chief with the Phillip Volunteer Fire Department, has a long history of great leadership over there with that department. Did step away a couple of years ago and now is back in leadership and has an EMTI certification, I believe. So not only is he a fireman, but he's also an EMT. So Marty, why don't you talk a little bit about your history, your training, that kind of stuff with us.
So I got started on the fire department, and I don't remember when it was, but it seems like a long time ago, Linda Smith and Lowell Rosette put on a first responder course, and I think at that time, what was it, Kathy, 20 hours or 40 hours? Remember, like back in the 80s?
Oh, back in the 80s, it would have been 40 hours. It was 20 hours along. That was the 22 hours was the first.
Okay, so Roger Williams took it. There were several guys on the fire department that took it. Yeah. And then they got me to be a EVOC driver for the ambulance for several years. And then when my kids graduated, got through high school and then college, and we quit running all over for sports, I decided to take the EMT basic course because the first responder kind of piqued my interest, you know, and you always kind of want to learn more and more. So my wife and I both took the EMT basic course, and then run as a basic for a couple, 3 years, and then decided to take the intermediate course. And just been doing it ever since.
Okay, good. We have a long and illustrious history with the department, and this community is very thankful for that. Brock Hansen is our next panelist. Brock's a young guy in the community, has a successful business going in the heating and cooling area, and so we're thankful for having you here, Brock, and Brock is rather new in the department, I believe. So why don't you tell us your story, Brock, if you would.
I've been on the fire department for a little over 4 years now, so still very green at everything I do. I just kind of joined because you kind of look up to the guys that's on the fire department and see what they do, and just wanted to help the community out some more. So been active, very active in the fire department, and I'm actually a co-treasurer too. Doing a little bit more all the time.
Okay, as we move through the evening, we're going to talk about the future, and you're the future, so we'll probably talk to you a little more about that. We also have a gentleman with us who is probably, if anybody would be known as Mr. Volunteer in the Phillip community, it's Roger Williams. He has done everything and does it willingly and does it capably, and for that, Roger, we are so thankful for your service and your dedication to this community. And so why don't you talk to us a little bit about your experience, why you got involved, your training, those kinds of things, Roger. We appreciate you so much.
Well, I guess I started about 45 years ago, to say that, but I went to a fire up at Kennedy Ranch's feedlot, and Pee Wee Hook was the fire chief at that time, and I just went up there and they let me do a few things, and I kind of liked it and thought it was great helping everybody, so I got on there then and just stayed, never got away from it. Marty and I have been together officers for quite a few years now, and I guess it helps keep the community going. You know, we just want to do all the stuff to help everybody, and my bosses have always been good. If I need to go ahead and go, and it's been quite an experience. We've seen a lot of things and done a lot of different things that would have never done any other way.
Yeah. Roger, are you trained at all for first responder with such as an EMT or anything such as that?
We took first responder courses, EVOC driving. I drive for the ambulance a little bit once in a while. The assistant chief with Marty the chief, and so when he decides he don't want to be there because he has to drive the ambulance to Rapid City, he tells me I have to do it. But yeah, we've had a lot of extrication courses. We've even taught a little bit of it. Pastor Kathy's helped us with some of it. We took classes for quite a few years of about every kind, you know, farm extrication to, you know, wildland fire, all the 1-2, about all that stuff, and it seemed like you just kind of get involved in about everything, you know, when there's something going on, try to keep everything going, you know.
You know, I think about that growing up in Kadoka, and they had a volunteer fire department there, and a good one. And they basically fought fires, and that was really it. And your roles have expanded all the way into healthcare and hazardous materials and all the kind of things. Liability insurance is a big issue for you guys, and so your roles have just expanded exponentially, and it's changed a great deal. So that's a great story that you guys have shared with us this evening, your history and your dedication and that. So I want to move into what I'm going to call a burnout. I know that that's an issue with first responders. PTSD is an issue. As I said at the outlet, that was an issue before the legislature last winter. And so I want to just touch on that a little bit, because we have a limited population here. You guys aren't going to last forever, and we have to have somebody else to replace you. So Brock, you're the guy. So Kathy, maybe you could start us out on that a little bit, on burnout and just what it, I mean, are you still fresh and good, or are you weary? Do you get weary?
You get weary. I remember a few situations where a real traumatic situation where we lost it wasn't here in this community, but we lost a very important person in a tragic way, and you feel like you're walking through town and nobody will talk to you. And it's just the fatigue of the situation, but a lot of it is they don't know what to say to you. You know, and you can't say much because of privacy rules. You know, and you just sometimes you wonder, why do I volunteer to put myself in these positions? You know, to feel that grief, to see that family, and to think, was there something else I should have, could have, would have done? And that's where you really you really have to get into relying on your training. I do a lot of teaching, and the things that I push home is, you may do everything exactly right. People are still going to die. And you got to understand that. But what you can do in those situations is to know you tried your best, and that you treated that person with respect, and that you treat the family with respect. And trying to keep in perspective. But, you know, I am so glad they don't make Dodge Intrepids anymore, because I had a situation where we lost a little 6-year-old, and every time I saw a Dodge Intrepid, I saw that girl. And I'm so glad I don't have to see that anymore. And that is the PTSD. It is. And when you come off a bad situation, for me, I guess, and with my counseling background and all of that, I give myself permission to feel.
Good for you.
You know, and because you have to feel and I tell people, when you don't feel the bad stuff we see, get out. Because you need to be a caring, intact, feeling human being first. And then I give myself that permission to feel. And then you process it, and you say, okay, I'm moving on. But if you shove it down, it's just going to fester out, and it's going to come out someplace.
I was reading some stuff this afternoon, and this quote is just absolutely in line with what you said. I'm going to read it here. This gal, she's a doctor, she said, it's when you may not have witnessed or experienced the trauma yourself, but because you help people so much, you almost take on the trauma and stress that they have. You just kind of absorb that because you're so intertwined and so in love with your job and what you do for people. So perfect, Kathy. That's segued nicely into that. How about you, Marty? You guys have had a lot of firemen that have come and gone over the many years, and I know that can be very traumatic, time-consuming, can be hard work and dangerous work.
Yeah.
So you talked to us a little bit about burnout, and I know you stepped away for a while, and perhaps that was some burnout.
No, I wasn't burnout. I just, you always try and mentor somebody into your job, you know, to hopefully have somebody take over when you retire. And Matt Rackling agreed to take it until his girls got too busy in sports. And I said, perfect, you know, give me a little break, give you a little experience. Worked out good, you know. But I can remember, what's it been, Raj? 5-6 years ago, we were out 18 days straight on the fire trucks. I think everybody was suffering a little burnout then, but
Yeah, he was hoping the whistle didn't blow again because it was
Just-
continuous and,
I can remember days at the bank when I'd look across the street and you guys were there, waiting. Nothing was happening, but it was coming, so you were there, so.
yeah,
one year it was, what, 32 fires in a month?
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it was crazy, you know, you might not get one day and get 2 or 3 the next. It was just crazy.
Okay. Brock, I suspect you really don't have any burnout yourself, but maybe you've seen some with some of the older guys, or any thoughts on that issue at all?
Yeah, like, I'm new enough now where I haven't been around enough to be burnt out, but there are days where you get home from work at 5, 6 o'clock, and then you get a call for firing out till 3 or 4 in the morning, and then you get a couple hours of sleep, and you're back to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, and you do that because you want to do that, but there are days where you are wishing to get some more sleep or some more, a little more rest, but it's all part of it.
You maybe, as at this point, haven't seen the tragic situation where a life was lost or some such a thing
Not,
that would be tough for me, I will tell you that.
it is hard, and then you just take it in strides and hope you can learn something.
Okay. And Roger, I would think over your history, you've seen everything. And you don't ever seem to burn out. I know you had some surgeries and stuff that made you slow down a little bit, but you just seem to keep clicking along. So
Yeah.
you talk to us a little about burnout.
Well, you know, it happens because eventually you get tired of doing all the work, fixing stuff up. These new guys have come in. We're fortunate. You say we're going to have a work evening and they show up. You'll have 10, 12 guys show up for work to help on stuff. And it takes burden off us because like changing the pumps on the trucks, there's always stuff broke down, always got stuff to fix. It's just how it is. And you say, hey, Brock, can you come and help tonight? And there'll be him and his brother and 2 or 3 his dad. They show up. It's really nice to have that because for a long time it was 4 or 5 guys doing all the stuff, keeping it together, you know. And we do the Golden Glow Parade, and I was doing that by myself. Now I get these guys all stepped in, and it makes it a lot easier because you don't have so much stuff to try to do by yourself. And we're very fortunate. Like I said, Brock said, you know, you get calls 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, vehicle accidents and stuff. It's, you know, you don't want to go because you got to work it in the morning, but you go. And when you get there, the adrenaline's going, then you can't sleep when you get home. So I said, you think about it, what I did, or did I do it right? I mean, just a lot of things to review, you know. But
So it might be safe to say for you, you've been at it a long time, but you're probably not burned out yet. You're
no,
good
I'm not
to
burned
go.
out.
Yeah.
No, we kind of give it up when Marty took he took the assistant chief when Matt Reckling took the chief position for the little time, and we decided then we thought, well, you know, these guys are going to want to step in. We'll let some guys come into it. But when Matt said he couldn't do it, he had kids going. Marty said, would you take they'd like to have you back in the assistant chief position. If you'll take it, I'll go back in the chief. And I said, yeah, we can do that. So what have you been the chief, Marty? How many years now have you been in the chief? Do you know? Because I've been an assistant for 18 years.
Probably
14?
been- Well, 14 was my first run, and then I
Yeah,
got.
because I was in there when Jerry Noble was the chief. I was assistant then.
Yep.
And it's been quite 18 or 19 years of it anyway. But you still, the whistle goes, your adrenaline goes, you're on your way. I mean, that's just how it is. You're gonna.
I used to.
There's never the same thing ever twice. It's always something
Yeah.
different.
From my office, I could always see you guys gather, and you could tell there was a lot of adrenaline there, so that's a good thing. I've noticed over time that, I'm gonna say especially with the ambulance part, Kathy, when I came to Phillip, a lot of folks were becoming EMTs and drivers and that sort of thing, but a lot of those folks have moved on or for whatever reason changed, and so I'm wondering about retention of those folks. Is it that they just are too busy or don't have the passion, or what is it with retention?
Retention in volunteer ambulance services across the state is a huge topic. Every year at our state conferences, it's a topic. You know, how do you get people interested? How do you keep them interested? I think one of the difficult things is the entities that cover what it takes to be an EMT, primarily are looking at your paid services, where that's your full-time job. When I became an EMT, it was a 70-hour EMT basic class with 10 hours of observation. You had 70 hours of class time. Today, to do an EMT basic class, your minimum hours you're going to need is 150 hours, and that's cramming. And because there's so much more that they're putting on that they want us to know. And the books have gone from being about this thick to being about, the last one we just did was probably that thick. It's a lot of time commitment when you're a volunteer to get certified. Then you have to have so many hours afterwards to stay certified. And it is, as we've been talking, a high emotion type of a thing. And some people, I think, get into it and find out, you know what, I really can't handle the blood like I thought I could. I really, you know, the whatever it is just gets to me too much. Every EMT has something that gets to them. And everybody's at something different. If it's an OB call, Marty's going for a Coke.
I'm with Marty.
That's our joke. That's our standing joke.
I get it.
But there are things, for me, what gets me is when someone's really been drinking a lot and they're bleeding, the blood has a different odor to it. And that gets me.
Didn't know that.
But it gets a real coppery odor to it. And that'll make me nauseous every time. But you fight through it. But I think, you know, there's so much training that's required. The high intensity of emotions. For those that stay in it for any length of time, I truly look at it as you're called by God to do it. Because you learn how to process all of that. You learn and all that. And it's...
Kathy, I want to stay with you for just a moment. You said a couple things that I think is really important that those who are listening know. And that's, you talked about how difficult it is to maintain volunteers. You also talked about paid service. And I know some communities are having to go to that, where they have to hire people to be first responders. Do you think that's something that's on the horizon for small communities like Phillip? Is that the trend that we can't buck? Or are we going to man up and keep...
Boy, it's expensive to...
I know. Some authorities have taxing ability.
Yep. There's the districts. There is a setup for an ambulance district, much like a fire district, with all the percentages and all of that kind of stuff. We went through that in Jones County, but I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one. I could be really rich if I could figure that one out.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's an answer, but I did want to talk about it because
Yeah.
it is an issue.
It is a
For
huge
sure.
issue.
Not only with ambulances, but firemen as well. So, Marty,
And-
what about you guys and retention? I know it seems like you have a lot of members and they stay for a long time. Is that an issue with the volunteer fire department? Or
Yeah,
not?
it is. It's tough to get active members.
Okay.
And by active, I mean come to the meetings, come to the trainings. You know, it's a volunteer service, and you can't make them come to a training. So we try and eat a meal, have a little fun in our training. You know, we try and keep it interesting. You know, but luckily, like Brock, Blake, all them guys, Bryce, Taylor, Casey. We've had a lot of young guys join. We need the youth because Roger's really getting old over there.
I can tell.
I'm right behind him. They already had to start replacing parts on him. So.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, it's tough to get.
Yeah. Brock, any thoughts on retention?
Like, I would say we are lucky at being the fire department because we do have lots of younger guys that are wanting to join and wanting to learn and wanting to do, and they're stepping up quite a bit. And not really the older guys, but the older guys are stepping back a little bit and letting us learn and kind of take over some roles and helping a lot.
Okay. Roger, how about you? Any thoughts on that issue?
It's nice, like I said, to have the young guys come in there because we go out on a fire and they learn. You go out there and it's like, well, this is what you want to do. Don't want to go into this or whatever. And they listen very well. And probably the biggest thing we've learned is never chew anybody out. They're there to work and doing their best they can. Just explain things to them, and about every one of them's ready to come back and go again. You know, we've been very fortunate to have the younger guys come in. His sister came in. I mean, it's just awesome to have these people come in, and she's even a truck captain. And
Yeah.
it's nice if somebody wants to step up to the plate and do something like that. It's just pretty neat, you know.
How do you decide who drives and who does what? You mentioned truck captain. I'm interested in
Yeah,
that.
we have, everybody's assigned to a truck. Like I got one, and I'm assessed to one of the grass rigs, and like Brock's got the new pumper, and I'm glad he knows how to run it because most of us don't. And we were gonna have a training session this summer, never got to it. But anyways, we could make it work, we had to, but it's everybody, we have certain guys that are captains and co-captains, and they're kind of responsible kind of keeping care of the truck, making sure it's ready to go when it's full of oil and everything's ready for water and all that on it. We have a lot of the guys that want to, you know, they haven't been to an accident. They want to go, we get, like Pastor Kathy said, they stay back a little bit, they're scared, they don't want to get involved right into it right away. And if they don't, we don't want them to, you know. Same as air packs, put an air pack on, go into a building. If they don't want to do it, we don't want them in doing it. And most of these guys are honest and go up and say, I can't do it, I can't get on in an air pack. And we've trained and stuff, and a lot of the guys can do it, but there's a lot of them that just don't want to, and that's
So
fine.
it's not the first guy to the fire hall that gets in the pickup and drives it away.
Most generally, those guys don't want to drive. It's just a few of us that have done it so much that they want, you guys drive, we'll ride on the back or whatever. And I kind of like to ride on the back once in a while and spray water, but I never get to. But it's kind of if you get in there and they're in the truck, let them go. If you know, a lot of them will get out and say, I don't want to drive. You know, it's just, but yeah, it's pretty much, we usually after the first year, we let them drive usually, but the way it's been, some of those guys been in there 4 or 5 months and they get to the fire hall. We trust them, go ahead and drive, you know, take it, go. We gotta have the trucks.
Okay. I want to switch over to response time. And I looked at some numbers this afternoon, and I found it actually kind of interesting. And I'll go through these, and I won't expect you guys to mention or to remember them, but it'll give you a flavor of what it is, and maybe you guys can share with me what our response time might be. But Wyoming, this won't surprise you, 35 minutes and 44 seconds from the time the call comes in to the time they get there. Well, you think of the ruralness of Wyoming, that wouldn't surprise you at all. Vermont, however, is the second longest at 22 minutes. Now, small community, small state, close proximity to people, you would think they would be very quick, but they aren't for whatever reason, and the information I have doesn't tell me. Montana, 22 minutes. North Dakota, 21 minutes. Now, I would assume they would be very similar to us, I don't know. And Kansas, 21 minutes. The quickest ones, Illinois, which can be quite rural, is 6 minutes. California, 6 minutes. Rhode Island, 7, Connecticut, 7, and Massachusetts, 8. So those are the slowest 5 and the quickest 5. You guys have any idea where you're
Is
at,
that
Kathy?
EMS or fire?
Well, it just says longest response times, and so I don't know the answer to that,
Okay.
Kathy. I'm not sure. I kind of lumped them together, but if I have a heart attack, can I expect 10 minutes or 35 minutes?
You'll be closer to 10 minutes around here if we're getting, depending on how far we have to go.
Yeah.
If you're at your house, we should be able to be there in 10 minutes, depending on how quickly our dispatch gets the information to us. See, sometimes that happens. If you make your 911 call in and they have to go through their thing, we have had issues where it's taken almost 7 minutes for dispatch to get us paged out. And we usually get a little riled up when we find out that's happened. And then we have people who are on call, that sign up to be on call. But if a 911 page comes in, it's the first people to the building and the truck goes out. And it may not be the person on call. But if it's a call from the hospital, that's going to be, I mean, sometimes they tell us, well, we're not going to need you for 35 minutes, but we just want you to know, heads up.
Okay.
So there are different, you know, with the speed. I like to see us from the point of receiving the 911. I feel we should have a truck on the road in no longer than 6 minutes.
See, maybe that's the question, because if you think of getting an ambulance to my house versus somebody in Milesville, that's not even a fair comparison, but perhaps that number where people in the rig headed out, maybe that's the number. So 6 minutes-ish.
Yeah.
Which would be pretty good compared to these numbers that I've read, but here again, we might be comparing apples to oranges, I'm not sure.
I believe in the state of South Dakota and the EMS, if you are consistently over 30 minutes, then the state's going to say what's going on. Because we have to turn in all our times.
Okay.
We have to log dispatch time to en route time to on-scene time to at-patient time. Dispatch time, facility, all those times have to be logged.
Okay.
You know, you may wonder, well, why on-scene to at-patient? Well, you might not have full access to a patient in a car crash till they get them extricated. In a big city, maybe you got to go up 20 flights. You know, so that's why there's that separation between on-scene at patient. But yeah, you know,
I wish
where those numbers, that's why I asked, was it EMS, was it fire?
I don't know that. I wish I'd had more time to
And
flesh that out,
also,
but yeah,
me
Marty, go
peeking
ahead.
over there, you know, I'm thinking for sure Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, and Kansas are all volunteer, so they're not right at the station where your Illinois, California, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, they're all paid and
Most
they're
of them
there.
are. Yeah.
That's a good point. Hadn't thought of that. That's an excellent point. So would you guys be, you think 6 minutes-ish from the time the whistle goes off to the time you're...
Oh, I think so.
Quicker than that, probably.
Yeah.
Because we've got 20 fire phones, and they can put them on our cell phones. So the whistle, if they call the 2646 number, it comes to all of our phones. We're at the fire hall when the whistle even goes most generally.
Oh, really?
It's
Okay.
that quick. And then there's still some in the houses, and you can set the whistle off from your phone. But most generally, if a 911 call, just like Pastor Kathy said, it takes a little while to get to you. You know,
Yeah.
those people say, geez, you know, it took a little while for you to get the call, you know.
Yeah.
But usually it doesn't. If we get the call, we're at the fire hall. Most generally, we got guys downtown. It's not very long, 2-3 minutes, and we're usually at the hall or less.
Actually, this information even tracked it by time of day. So if you get sick at 1 in the morning, you're going to wait a little longer than you would
Right.
at
1 in the afternoon.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense. I mean,
Right.
it doesn't take rocket science to figure that out, but some folks spend a lot of time analyzing those numbers, and I
Yeah.
guess it's probably good information. I actually take heart from the fact that within 5 or 6 minutes, you guys are on the road. So that's a good thing.
And something I think it's important for people to understand here. If you call 911 from your cell phone, that's going to Rapid City. Rapid City then sends it to Winter, who dispatches us. But if you call from your home phone, it goes directly to Winter.
See, I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to talk about that a little. I've heard grumblings of the time that is wasted for that 911 process to make the circuit.
So if you're in, recommendation, if you're in Phillip and you call or in the area and you call from your cell phone, tell them you want Winter. And they'll transfer you directly to Winter.
Okay, that's
Like
good
if someone calls me and I go to a house to check on somebody and I want the ambulance and I dial 911, I will tell them, I am Phillip Paramedic, send me to 602. Well, that's Winter. And they'll transfer me to 602 and then I can get the ambulance paged. But otherwise, Rapid's gonna take your information, send it to, or call winter, give them all the information again, and then they gotta build the call and send it to us.
Yeah.
And that's the tower that the cell phones hit, it slows things down.
I've heard that, and I'm glad you brought that up. That was something I think is important for folks to know, so, yeah, either call from your house phone or
Tell
tell them
them.
you want winter.
Yep.
Good information, that may save someone's life. Happy about that. Let's talk about finances a little bit. And I know, as I said earlier, some departments have taxing authority, and I don't believe any of you guys do here in South Dakota. But how do you do financially? Is it, I think I know how you raise your money, but I'm not sure. A lot of it is donations and other things. But Kathy, maybe you go first, and Roger, you or Marty, one of you guys, or Brock, somebody from the party.
You know, on the medical aspect of it, we bill insurances.
You get paid always.
No.
I didn't think so.
And we, you know, when it's a Medicare patient, we accept Medicare assignment. So, or Medicaid. We lose money on Medicaid. We can't roll a truck for the cost of rolling a truck out the door for what we're reimbursed by Medicaid for.
You're probably barely covered by Medicare.
We're covered by
Barely,
Medicare,
yeah.
You know, and it frustrates us because, you know, the private insurers or the self-payers are the ones that get hammered.
That would be true. Called cost shifting.
You know, but we do fairly well. We have a really good billing agent that we contract with who really understands coding. And in medicine, coding is the gold key. And how they what numbers they use to send it into Medicare or insurances or things like that. And you know, some of the frustrating parts is when say Rapid City's on diversion. Now diversion means they're not accepting patients from outlying facilities.
Yes.
And we have to go to Sioux Falls, or we have to go to a facility further away. We are only paid mileage to go to Rapid City.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we lose a lot of money when we have to do that. We do it, and we do it because we care about our people. We do it without a second thought. But all that type of stuff, especially Medicare, we only get paid mileage to the closest facility.
But at the end of the day, you're financially viable.
We are, yes.
Okay, I would have guessed that.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, we have good equipment. We keep our equipment in good working order.
Okay.
Yeah,
Marty or Roger, one of you guys want to talk a little about that? I know you do a lot of community things, and you ask for help, and I believe this community is very generous.
Yeah.
But,
Very, very.
yeah, so just talk about that a little, one of you guys.
So probably even 8-10 years ago, our fire department, Phillip Fire Department, was down in the 7% in the nation that didn't receive any tax district money. And I'm sure we're probably down in the 3% now, you know. So we strictly rely on donations and fundraisers. The city pays for all of our fuel. They pay our phone bill, electric bill.
Half the insurance.
Yeah, they pay for a good, it still costs us $13,000 a year for insurance, but they probably pay another $8,000 or $10,000.
Okay.
So it's a good thing, you know, the city helps us out, or we'd be upside down. And Brock can tell you as well as anybody, some months them guys get a little nervous when we got bills to pay. They're saying, well, what are we gonna do this month?
Where do we steal money from?
Yeah.
So if you go on government land, whether it's Forest Service or BLM or tribal, do you get reimbursed for that?
Oh, boy.
Not usually. We've been all over everywhere, and they'll say, give us your name and your fire department and all the stuff and all the trucks and everything, but most of the time we never.
You don't
We
get
receive
it.
it.
Some of the other departments do quite well with
Yes,
that,
they
so
do.
I'm surprised.
BIA fires, you're gonna get your money out of most of the time. National grassland fires, their new rule is if you're not on their fire, if their fire doesn't last 4 hours or more, they're not paying you anything. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me, because
You do too good a job.
if you were broke and let it burn for 4 or 5 hours, you
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
but that's crazy.
So again, I'll ask the same question that I posed to Kathy. At the end of the day, you are financially viable. You're okay. I mean, I wouldn't suspect that you're just rolling in cash, but you're
Right,
okay.
we get our bills paid every month. Now, when we do have an active fire season, we're a lot better off, you know, because we do get some insurance, and, yeah, when you have a summer where there's not many fires, the bills are still rolling in, you
Bills
know.
are still rolling in.
Don't have so much cash, but people around here are very, very good, you know.
I would have thought so.
Yep.
Is liability insurance your biggest cost?
Well, that's all rolled in to our fire pack insurance.
Okay.
So we've got that through First National Agency at the bank. It's one big package deal,
Okay.
so.
They're very good though, but everybody's, like our fundraisers, you know, and our derbies and all the stuff we get done, people are so good. Someone will come in there and they'll just throw more money out than they even, the Calcutta sometimes gets way up there.
But you know what? That doesn't just happen. You guys work hard to put on those events, so it doesn't just happen.
Yeah, it makes it kind of tough, but like I said, when you get all the new guys, and we have a lot of fun too. We'll get out there and we have like some of the stuff, the demolition derbies. This year we had the couple cars we raced at halftime, and then we had the tractor races, lawnmower tractors, and those guys thought they would race, so give us some more stuff for next year to think about doing. But most everybody's really good, Joe. So
So what do you think about the future of being a first responder, whether it's a fireman or a paramedic like Kathy?
Well, I
Maybe that's a broad
don't,
question, I'm not sure, but.
yeah, I don't see this area ever going to any paid departments. It's just too expensive.
But you envision Phillip Volunteer Fire Department existing far into the future, taking care of the needs of this community.
Yeah, guys like Brock, you bet. Brock, like all them guys are.
And financially, I mean, I don't think anything will ever change there. You don't even seek taxing authority, and I think you'd have a hard time getting it. So it's the support of the community far into the future that.
Yep.
But I know that just from being an outsider, your reputation is very good in this community. I can say that, I'll say it publicly. Your reputation is stellar. And people will continue to support you guys. So I think the future is good.
Yeah.
I wish you were 30, Marty. Me too. Me too. But.
Yeah, I wish I was 30.
So Kathy, I'll pose that same question to you on the ambulance side. I mean, we have what, 2 or 3 paramedics in Hockin County, which is you.
We have one active.
You, well, Dodie, but she's.
She basically doesn't live here, but
Okay.
I'm the only one on the service.
Okay.
I mean, she has job other places. And when my other colleagues that are paramedics, they say, you're a volunteer paramedic. Why don't you go someplace and work and be paid? Because they can be.
Sure.
So, you know, unless you've got another job, you're not going to be a paramedic in a small community as you're, you know, you're not going to find that unless it's a paid service and that's your primary job. It's really, and luckily I've got a way that I can float a lot of my work. And, you know, but I am concerned about the future of rural EMS because of the requirements for training and to stay certified. The fear of liability in medicine is different than firefighting.
It's not just EMS, you know, from my time on the hospital board.
Right, in medicine.
Healthcare delivery in rural areas is difficult and always tenuous at best. So I totally understand what you're saying.
And then, like I said, I don't have an answer for it.
So could the system function without you, a paramedic? Can it operate with just EMTs?
It can operate with just EMTs. Transferring out of the hospital and things like that, the way we do, they'd have to be taking far more nurses, or they would be flying far more people out. And especially ranchers insurance don't always pay for air ambulances.
Seldom, I believe.
Yeah, and you have to have a special
Yes.
add-on to an individual insurance, and you're talking $60,000 to $70,000.
So it would change, it
It
would
would-
probably
it would-
stay, but it would be
Yeah,
at a different level.
Right,
I understand that.
yeah.
I hope that those that are listening this evening understand the importance of our ambulance service. We have a great medical facility here, and it does
We do.
well, and we're proud of it, but that's a leg that's terribly important.
Mm-hmm.
We transfer a lot of people, and I've said many times, if you look at healthcare in western South Dakota, there's Phillip, Pierre, Rapid City, Martin, and I think actually Henniger. So there's a lot of area out here, and oftentimes we need an ambulance, but if you do happen to get sick or have an accident, you probably should thank your lucky stars it's near Phillip.
You know, and two, we'll just call the helicopter. Saturday night, we had to take a transport on icy roads because they couldn't fly.
Yeah,
The weather already had them grounded.
it doesn't always work.
It doesn't always work, yeah.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground, and this has been fruitful. I said at the outset, I hope we'd have a few minutes at the end for some heartwarming human interest stories. And Roger, you came in a second late, so this is news to you, but I'm hoping that over your many years of service, there was something that happened that warmed your heart, that made a difference in somebody's lives. So I want to take just the remaining minutes we have left. Kathy, I might start with you, because I've heard some of your stories, and they are truly exemplary, so share one with us.
I think when you can really take someone who, say, is having a very major heart attack, and you're able to do things to either limit the damage that is done, or even if they, what we call code, and you can bring them back. You can bring them out of that cardiac arrest, and they're walking around the community talking to you, and and that kind of stuff. When you really, your training kicks in, and you really know you made a difference. That person's alive because you were there and you did the right thing. That keeps you going, and realizing that, I am making a difference.
Sure, I know you are. Marty, any specific time you saved somebody from burning up, or rescued somebody from a house, or something?
Yeah, probably.
Probably so.
And an interesting story the other night, Kathy Linda and I had to go to Pierre with a patient, and we stopped on the way home for a pop and a snack, and this individual says, "Hey, you want to see the baby you guys helped deliver 3 years ago?" That's one when I went.
That's what I'm talking about.
That was the one when he went and got a Coke, yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
But yeah, she showed us a picture. It's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
That's where you guys really make a difference in people's lives. Brock, you probably knew, but in anything?
Yeah, the thing that I'm like, not really, that I enjoy the most are like when you get to drive the fire trucks in the parade and everybody is waving and honking and smiling, and that's why you do it. And that's one of the things I enjoy the most.
Okay. Roger, you've had a world of experience. You had to have delivered a baby or fixed a broken leg or something somewhere along the way.
Probably the one that I think the most of that was probably the best for me was, there's so many, but we had a horse get stuck in the brick fence out here underneath the bridge here on the west edge of town, in the creek out here. And Marty and I, we were sandbagging houses, and these people come in and said, "This girl's gonna die if you guys don't get down there." So him and, was it Matt Reckling? And I don't remember who else was there, somebody else with us?
yeah,
But anyways, we jumped in the Suburban, Marty had nylon rope in there luckily, and we take off and go out there. Well, we get there and this little girl's out there trying to cut these wires. We're gonna cut them with a pair of horse shears, clipping shears, the hoofs, and she'd get out there and it'd carry her away. She couldn't get to it, and so we stopped her. And so anyway, we made a plan, and they tied a rope on me, Marty did, and went out there on the fence and got out on the side with her. They gave me a pair of wire cutters. And the guys can run wire cutters way better than I am because I have trouble out of the water, much less in the water. But went along the fence and got where that horse is at, and that horse, you could see its eyes were just huge. It was scared to death. Put my arms out, and that horse put his head in my hands and just stood there, didn't he, Marty? Just stood there. He was that tired. And so anyways, I let him rest for a second, and then I started feeling where the wire was at and cut the top one and left the middle one, cut the two bottom ones, had to go underneath it for a couple seconds and cut the last wire on the other side, went back around and cut the wire, and that horse got up out of there and kicked that piece of wood up out of it, had the fence post between her legs, and run up on the bank and turn on and look back, and that was cool.
Oh, that was cool.
That
I
was
remember that.
Do you?
And you risked your life for that.
It was worth it, though.
I remember
People,
that.
they never forgot, there was 70 people on the bridge, and never got letters from a lot of them
I
saying,
bet you did.
thank you, and it was cool, but that's probably one, it really wasn't too much to do with a fire, but that was something I won't forget.
Well, that's why you do what you do, you guys.
It was pretty cool.
That's why you do what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, you know what? We are at the hour, and it goes by quickly. It's always fun to talk about issues, and we're going to continue to do this, I think, on a monthly basis. Anybody out there listening, if you have an issue or a topic or something that you'd like to do, get that to Ralph Gibas or myself or Pastor Kathy. They're kind of instrumental in this, and so we'll probably see you guys out there in 3 weeks or so. And thanks a million for participating, you fellows. This was great.
Thank you.